But Jonathan had not heard that his father had taken an oath of people, and he stretched out the end of the rod that was in his hand and dipped it in the honeycomb and put it in his hand to his mouth, and his eyes lit up. So we're going to do a little experiment here. Nobody's allowed to drink or eat anything beforehand. So I'm going to have you ladies pick up these plates and take them around. There's one dot on here. If you think you're a dot, put it to your tongue. We're going to do a little experiment. Ladies, can you come out? Would you mind open out this side? Each of you can ladies do this. Hand around to people that there's 4 dots. Let's just take 1 dot. Everybody gets 1 dot. T. No, that's why there's 4 dots. You get 1 dot on the plate. 1 dot. You get 1 dot. So anyway, excellent. You need a dot. I didn't get a dot either. So Jonathan was, this passage took place right after Jonathan was standing at the foot of the mountains, looking across the valley to the enemy. And his father was contemplating, what should we do? Should we go into battle? I don't know if we should fight. He was waiting. And Jonathan told his sword bearer, come on. If it's the Lord's will, then we will go across and we'll fight. If we die, we die. But if it's God's will, then he will accomplish that. Yeah, Jonathan did something amazing. He went up the hill. The enemy was the Philistines were making fun of him. Yeah, come up here, fight us if you think you can. And all of a sudden, he became like a samurai and just started slicing and dicing with the enemy. And the sword bearer followed behind them, killing people with the swords that they picked up along the way. And afterwards, after Jonathan wins this great battle, he comes down and he's hungry because their army hasn't eaten for days. His dad said, we're going to fast until we know what to do. Nobody eat honey. Nobody eat anything. And Jonathan comes down, and after this battle, you're exhausted. You have no energy left. And he sees the honey on the ground. He dips his staff in there, and he takes a bite of it. And what happens when you take a bite of honey when you have no food in your stomach or nothing in your stomach? What happens? It gives you energy. As the text said, it said his eyes lit up. You have like a burst of energy. Did you feel that? Did you took that next one? Just a little bit? Just a dab? A little bit of money? Now you need more money? Well, we're going to do that. Well, so why don't you come up and lead us into Kavanaugh, and then when Walt is done with Kavanaugh, everybody get your coffee, get your food, and then when everybody's seated back down, then Chris is going to lead us into music, and then we'll get back to the teaching.
When Jonathan tasted the honey, his eyes lit up. He had a boost of energy. How many of you ever feel like you need a boost of energy? Tired? Just the life sucked out of you? Almost still awake or asleep, trying to figure out which one? Honey has the power to kickstart your metabolism. What is metabolism? Anybody? It's a chemical process that does what, Walt?
Breaks down the food that we breaks down different nutritional areas and circulate whole process.
And the main purpose, go ahead and give us the slide. Metabolism is the chemical reactions, good job, Walt, in the body's cells that change food into energy. Our bodies need this energy to do everything from moving to thinking to growing. Everything from moving to thinking to growing. We need energy to help us to grow, to help us to think. That's why everybody's drinking their coffee as well in here, right? Because we need that energy, and we also need energy to serve other people. The rabbis used to teach this to children for centuries, that the Torah, the Bible, these words in here, and the words that probably aren't in here as well that go along with this, is like honey. And they would teach these to the children, and they would have them dip like you did today. You dip your fingers. And when you tasted the honey, what did you taste? What was it like? It was sweet. And so the idea was to teach that these words in here are sweet, and that we should go back to them over and over. And there's a passage in Ezekiel. It says this. This is one of the prophets. He says, "And he said to me, Son of man, eat what you find. Eat this scroll." This text, these words, "Eat the scroll and go speak to the house of Israel. And don't kill yourself on the way there." And I opened my mouth, and he fed me the scroll. And he said to me, "Son of man, feed your stomach and fill your stomach with this scroll that I'm giving you." And I ate it, and it was sweet as honey in my mouth. The Psalms also speak of this. Psalm 119. Oops. Psalm 119, hang on. Psalm 119 says this. "I have restrained my feet from every evil way, that I might guard your word." What is the word guard there? Do you remember? What? What's the Hebrew word for guard? Do you remember? Samar. Excellent job. Samar. Guard. "That I might guard your word. I have not turned aside from your right rulings, for you yourself have taught me. How sweet to my taste has your word been, more than honey to my mouth. From your orders I get understanding, therefore I have hated every false way." The word is like honey. It was interesting. I was having a conversation with Lenny. Some of you guys know my friend Lenny. We were talking about leadership, and he was, having a debate with somebody in another group about leadership, and they were trying to tell him, like everything that struggles that you have with your employees comes down to leadership, which I would agree with a lot of this. And he would say, "Wait a second, but what if they just don't want to do the job?" And they would say, "Well, leadership can, train them." And he's like, "Yeah, but there's some people that just don't want to do it. They're just not motivated to do it." And he kept arguing about that. And they never turned the corner on him. I said, "Well, Lenny, it is still a leadership issue. The issue is when a person doesn't have motivation, what are you doing to motivate them?" Which then, as I thought about that for a while, I thought, how many of us struggle with motivation? Is there any time where you just don't feel like doing something? You just don't want to do it? You just don't want to get out of bed? You just don't want to go to work? You just don't want to go to the gym? You don't want to do it. I am unmotivated to do it. How many of us are just unmotivated to dig into this? To open this up and just read for 2 minutes? Where is the motivation for that? And this is a problem that I see in a lot of places. I mean, this is maybe a national, not a global issue. Like, this is an issue where people are just losing their motivation to do just about anything. And I think a lot of it comes down to purpose. When there is no purpose, there is no motivation. I remember I went to Rustin's house one day. This was years ago. This was on Veronica. This was not long after you guys moved in. And Josh was on the kitchen floor doing crunches and all kinds of stuff, and you were timing him. And I'm trying to have a conversation with you, and you're like, "Wait, I got to time him," because he's doing crunches and doing all this stuff. And I'm like waiting. I'm waiting. I'm like, "Dude, what are you doing?" And he's like, "I'm getting ready. I got to try out for the basketball team at Shaman High School." And he was doing everything he could to make the team. Why was he on the floor? Why was he doing crunches? Because he was motivated for the purpose of making the team. He wanted to play. There was a motivation that came from a purpose. In today's culture, it seems like we lack purpose. For some people, we try to find purpose in hedonism. What's hedonism? What? Excellent. The idea, hedonism is just, I'm going to do anything I can for my own personal pleasure. I want to do what I want to do. Hedonism is just, I'm seeking my own personal pleasure. I'm going to buy cars. I'm going to buy money. I wish I could buy money, right? That would be nice. I'm going to spend money on everything that I can that I want because it makes me feel good. If it feels good, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to buy it, whatever it is. If we look over history, how does that typically work out? All right. You're never satisfied. You never have enough. You're always looking for the next new shiny thing, and it's never enough. And you live a life of emptiness and unfulfilled lives. There's only one thing that can bring true purpose. One thing that will make us hungry. What do you do when you're hungry? What? Before you eat, what do? You cook. When you're hungry, though, what happens before you do that? You start thinking about it, right? And what happens in your body? Your stomach does what? Starts growling, right? You might get a headache. You might like, I need food. And then sometimes, what's the old Snickers commercial? Right? Yeah, you're hangry, right? And some people I know get hangry, right? They just, when they're hungry, they just snap at you. And it's like, come on, man. What's going on? Matthew chapter 4 says this, then Yeshua was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tried by the devil. Oh, there we go, yeah. And after having fasted 40 days and 40 nights, guess what? He was hungry. He was hungry. What do you do when you haven't eaten for hours? You're like this kid, I want food now. How many of you have ever fasted before? What's the longest you've ever fasted? 3 days. What was that like? Oh, okay. The first day was rough. Yes. How long did you guys fast for? What's the longest? 30 days. You would just have liquid? What was that like?
Well, I was super intentional. I needed to be a switcher, and I needed to be in prayer. If I didn't do that, it was super difficult. But whenever I answered prayer and I went to whenever I would work, like instead of eating meals, essentially I would read the word, breakfast, lunch, dinner, type of thing. And I would pray, and that encouraged me. But it was obviously still physically hard too, so like weak and tired and
How's the headache?
I had headaches for like the first 3 days. But yeah, it was definitely like there was a day where I didn't read that much. I wasn't intentional about prayer. I was just tired and probably sending people at work, and so there was like a huge difference when I was focused on like I felt like I was trying to focus on food and like needing to eat food and needing to fill me, versus when I was just focused on like having God fill me.
So here's Yeshua, 40 days. And these fasts are, I don't know how much liquid. A lot of times you read the stories, there's nothing. No food, no water, just a fast. Now, 40 days without water. I don't know, how many days can you live without water? It's like 3 days, something like that. So there's got to be some type of liquid in there, but there's no food for 40 days. And at this point, Yeshua is probably what? He's hungry, it says. And the tempter takes him out there and says, hey, if you're the Messiah, if you truly are the Messiah, then you should be able to turn these rocks into food. You should be able to do this, or you should be able to do that. If you're hungry, you should be able to take care of this. So let's see, what power do you have? And how does Yeshua respond? He says, and the trier came to him and said, if you are the son of Elohim, command these stones to become bread. But Yeshua answered, saying, it has been written, man shall not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God. Where do we find food like this? Like you said, a good example. Like when you were hungry, you would go to the scriptures. You would go and do these things. Matthew 7:7-8 says this. What do we do when we're hungry? Ask, and it shall be given to you. Seek, and you shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives, and he who seeks finds, and to him who knocks it shall be opened. Where do we find food that isn't literal food, but something that feeds us? Something that feeds your soul, something that gives you energy, something that motivates you, something that gives you purpose. Because you can eat food, and within 2 or 3 hours, what happens? You're hungry again, right? You're never having enough. And food just, it satisfies the body, but it doesn't give you purpose. What is the food that gives you purpose? Like, this is what I want to do. This is where I want to go. This is what I want to be. Yeshua says, ask, seek, knock. If you really want to find food, you got to go look for it. You want to find this food, dig into it. If you just come on Saturdays and you hear me talk about this, it's all right. But you'll never understand what these words truly mean until you actually pursue them. Until you actually open this up and actually read it yourself. Otherwise, it's just words on a paper. It's meaningless. Proverbs chapter 2. Proverbs 2 says this. My son. And when I read this, you have to recognize that this is a father writing to his children, to his son. So he's not writing like, hey, read these words. My son, this is like genuinely like heartfelt. My son, if you accept my words and treasure up my commands with you so that you make your ear attend to wisdom, incline your heart to understanding. For if you cry for discernment, lift up your voice for understanding. If you seek her as silver, or if you seek this wisdom like you wanted to be on the basketball team, or you wanted to achieve something great, if you seek her like this and search for her as hidden treasures, then you would understand the awe of God and find the knowledge of God. For Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh gives wisdom, and out of his mouth comes knowledge and understanding. How often do we struggle in life? Like, what am I supposed to do? What should I do about this job? What should I do about this relationship? How should I talk to this person? What am I supposed to do, God? But what if we were to just seek here first? What if we were to dig into these words and just ask, what am I to do? How am I to live? What choices am I to make? Then you would understand the awe of God and find knowledge and wisdom and understanding. One more passage, John 6. (32 and 35). Therefore Yeshua said to them, truly, truly, I say to you, Moses did not give you the bread out of heaven, but my Father gives you the true bread out of the heaven. For the bread of God is he who comes down out of the heaven and gives life to the world. So they said to him, Master, give us this bread always. And Yeshua said to them, I am the bread. He who comes to me shall not get hungry at all, and he who believes in me shall not be thirsty at all. Yeshua is not talking about literal bread. He's talking about purpose. When we are hungry and we thirst for something in life, we thirst for much more than what we have. This is where we find motivation. This is where we find purpose. Yeshua says, follow me and I will give you a purpose for your life. Instead of just wandering around trying to figure out what am I to be doing, Yeshua says, follow me. And I will lead you on a path, on a journey that you would never have expected. I wonder if there's any correlation to the fact that nationally, we have the lowest numbers of people that are a part of any type of faith community in history. I think the last poll that they said was about 36% of the people in this country actually attend a church twice a month. Not every day. Twice a month. 36%. How many people in this country are struggling with depression? Do you have the next slide? No. Oh my gosh, did I not have the picture in there? Go back one. There's no picture in there? There was supposed to be a picture on there. Somehow it didn't get connected on there. My bad. The depression, suicide, anxiety rates in Gen Z has increased about 136% since 2019. For millennials, it was up 80%. For Gen Xers, it's like, 50% or something like that. I mean, the numbers are ridiculously high. And when they define anxiety and depression, that you think about that you are depressed on a daily basis. Something is wrong on a daily basis. People who think that way has gone up 130%. And how many people are part of the faith community? Is there any correlation? If there's no purpose in life, where do you find purpose? Imagine if we spent just as much time digging into this as you spent on this. I mean, I probably should do a test right now. You probably don't want me to do it. But if you were to pull your phone out, right, and go to the screen time and look at how much time do you spend on your phone? How much time do you spend on your phone in social media? Reels, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. Do you ever look? Does anybody in here ever look? Do you know what the national average is for how much time you spend on here?
6 hours.
It's a little bit over 6 hours a day.
But it's literally designed to keep you in it.
It is designed that way. Yes. So something is designed to pull you away from something that could give you purpose into something that gives you what? How many people, and this is where the study came from. The guy that was doing the study said, look, this is the thing that's causing all the depression and anxiety. This thing. He said, if you have kids, don't get your child a phone. When they turn 13, get them a flip phone. Do not have a phone that has a self-facing screen until they're at least 20, because their brains don't know how to control this. Because you get sucked into this, and it's like a vortex. It just pulls you in.
I don't really engage with things. I see a lot of people who are running it, just sucked into it. Much kids are.
Absolutely. I'm just saying, as a good parent, though, we should be training. You, the one who just said it. Train your kids up. We should be training our kids to say, hey, no to this stuff. This is dangerous. Stay away. It's like fire.
But I can remember when, I'm dating myself here, but when mobile phones first came out, they were touch screen, but even having mobile phones, another 10 years later, I can remember hearing about my friends' kids dealing with depression and dealing with things. I mean, for the first time, it was like I never ever heard of a kid dealing with depression
Right.
like that.
I'm not sure. I think that's one of the things is that home amplifies.
Yeah.
But I think the reason there's so much depression is because we insist on being a victim. We are taught everybody has a broken victimization. So yeah, it's all depressing because the world's wrong when you go into the world here. We learn not victimization, we learn gratitude. Those two things are
Contradictory, yes. And I think that's one. I don't think there's one answer. I think there's a multiple reasons why. But the science shows since this came out, things have changed in our youth. Things have changed in our society. Things have changed in our adults.
Also, like the phone gives you access to everything
Right.
goes on in the world, in everyone's life,
Right.
strangers' lives, in I saw some conspiracy theories say, because Apple connected, so it's like, they've been in the tree in the US. They will
Well, doesn't it have a bite out of it? It does have a bite out of it. I think I've seen that, yeah.
And I'm not saying that they're but I'm saying, like, when you think about it, you know, TikTok and these Instagram videos and stuff, it's reels of the kid now. And you see everything going on, everyone's teaching you something, everyone's saying something, so many voices. And, you know, so I think part of it is that access to so much quote-unquote knowledge or quote-unquote information.
Information, more so than knowledge. That's the difference. And that's what we were just talking about, the difference with Proverbs, right? Where do we find true understanding? Where do we find true knowledge, true wisdom? It's not going to be from Joe Schmo riding his bike down the roof of the house trying to hit the pool, right? I mean, that's not knowledge and wisdom. Genesis. You were wondering, oh, we're done with Genesis. Now I brought it back, just for Walt. Let's get there. Genesis 4. Kevin, you got your Bible? Genesis 4. 4:10. Somebody read Genesis 4:10 for me, please. Who's got it?
The Lord said, "What have you done? Voice of your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground."
Okay, so review. Cain just did what? He just killed his brother, right? He goes before God, and what does he say to God? Am I my brother's keeper? Come on. Is it my job? Is it my duty to babysit my little brother now? It's not my job. Somebody else's job to babysit him. And there's a little bit of an issue. Read it again.
The Lord said, "What have you done? Voice of your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground."
Now, this is an interesting part. The voice of your brother's blood. The word there is actually plural. It should be read, the voice of your brother's bloods, which is interesting. And the rabbis have discussed this for a long time. Why would it be plural? What does it mean by bloods? Because it's not an accident. God is saying, your brother's bloods are crying out to me. Why does it say that? Because you didn't just kill your brother, you killed everybody that would come from him. That whole generation, a line of people, that potential that would come from your brother are crying out to God now. They will never exist because of what you did. When you kill a person, you don't just kill that person, you kill everybody that follows that person in the family line. This is one of the reasons why in Judaism, the sanctity of life is so important and crucial. Genesis 11 and 12. Go ahead.
And now you have cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth and received your brother's blood from your hand. And when you work the ground, you shall no longer yield to you its strength. You shall be a fugitive and wanderer on the earth.
What's Cain's punishment?
Will. Will.
Toil without any,
Toil with no benefit. Wanderer, what'd you say? Nomad, what'd you say, Alex? Toil the earth. What didn't we see? No, what punishment didn't we see? It wasn't capital punishment. The rest of the Torah is very specific. For first-degree murder, what is the punishment? Death, capital punishment, right? If you have intentionally want to kill somebody and you are found guilty of that, it is a death penalty. God doesn't kill him here. Why is that? Is it because did he intentionally, plan out, methodically think, I'm going to kill my brother? Or was it a crime of passion? Was it just, I'm so mad at you in this moment, and he punches him and he kills him, or he hits him with a stick? Think about this at this point. In Cain's life, what human being has died before him, according to the Torah? Nobody. So does he even know that you could kill a human being? We don't know. So was it, what? Well, according to this story, this is long before Moses, bro. This is a good point. But was that a crime of passion as well? Yep. Oh, you watched the TV show, didn't you, on Netflix? You were watching the Testaments on Netflix. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And it's not the same. Verse 13. Alex.
Cain said to the Lord, my punishment is greater than
My punishment is greater than I can bear. My punishment. The Hebrew word there is avonai, which is interesting because it's easy to read into this text tone. When we read that text, what are we thinking Cain is saying? Yeah. Oh my gosh! I can't believe you're giving me this work. Like this is too much, God. But the word avonai means punishment. It also means my sin. He could also be saying, my guilt is too much. I can't believe that I hit my brother and he's dead. This is too much for me to bear, God. See, the interesting about this word is it could be read either way. It could be read, my punishment is too much, or it could be read, my guilt is too much. We easily want to read into the text and think how bad Cain is, but we're like Cain all the time too, aren't we? Don't we burst in our anger? Don't we blow up on people? Don't we say things that are just like murder to some people? And then when we step back and realize how we just destroyed a relationship, we're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe what I did. Why would I have done such a thing? My guilt is too much. 14 and 15.
Behold, you have driven me away from the ground, and from your face I shall be hidden. I shall be a fugitive and a wanderer from the earth. Whoever finds me will kill me. Then the Lord said to him, not so, if anyone who kills Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. And the Lord put a mark on Cain, lest any countenance should have.
The mark on Cain. Is it a curse or a lifesaver? Yeah, fine.
Because then I can see that walk.
Interesting.
Where do you have people come from?
Well, that's another story. So the Hebrew word for the mark or the sign is oath. Oath, which is an interesting word. Aleph, Vav, Tav. Right? And I got stuck on this word because I was like, okay, what is oath? Like, what is this mark that is on him? And then I was digging into something that blew my mind.
As I was looking at this in the Hebrew, I went back to the original language. Remember how the pictorial language, what was the pictorial language? What would they have seen? What would this group of people have seen when this? And so if we break down the Aleph, if we can remember this story, Aleph, right? What's the word Aleph represent? Ox, very good, right? So ox is like that, right? And ox is what? Strong, right? The ox is strong, so something strong, right? And then the vav. The vav in ancient Hebrew was actually looked very much like the vav. Actually, it was kind of like this. And what is that? What does the vav represent? A nail. Excellent. Kind of looks like a nail, right? It's a nail, something that holds together. And then, what was the tav? Tav. Nope. It's an interesting one. We don't talk about it a whole lot. But tav is the idea behind it is the sign, or the sign of a covenant. It's what used to sign of a covenant. So oath is this something that is strong, that is held together by nails, that creates a covenant. Right? And what's the ancient symbol of the tav? Something that is extremely strong, that holds together like nails, will be the sign of the covenant. So as I looked at that, I was like, come on. If you were in the first century and you are doing your Torah portions every year, and you're reading through this, the last thing that you would ever dream about is that your Messiah, who you've been praying for, who was supposed to rescue you from these nasty Romans who have been beating you and whipping you just like the Egyptians did. The last thing that you would be thinking of this Messiah that would come to give you a sign of the covenant, to remind you that life comes from God, would be a symbol of death. Who would think that a symbol of death would represent the sign of the covenant until you open up Genesis and you see the mark that God put on Cain? The strength that joins us together comes from the sign of the covenant. In 14 days, we will be celebrating the Passover, as Walt said. But with the Passover, we don't just celebrate the Passover meal. In that ceremony, we also celebrate and recognize the resurrection of the Messiah. The resurrection that came from the cross. In this ceremony, in 14 days, we, as Walt said, are to experience this as though we are going through it. Rabbi Sachs said, forget the story of freedom, and you will eventually lose freedom itself. The further and further people move away from this and fall into the vortex of this, the further and further we will realize the freedom that we lost. The freedom that comes from the Passover, the freedom that comes from the covenant, the freedom that comes from the resurrection, the freedom that comes that if we pursue our lives and follow God, we lose that if we forget. Jesus said, pick up your cross and follow me, and you will find true life. Pick up this cross. Pick up the mark. Pick up the sign that demonstrates this is my purpose in life. This is who I follow. This is why I find This is where I find motivation and joy and fulfillment and purpose. Until you do that, you will wander aimlessly. I pray that we allow this sign to become the spark that ignites the fire inside of this community. Not just this gathering community, but all of our St. Bernard communities in New Orleans. If there can be a spark that we can recognize that this is the sign that brings us together, that gives us motivation, that gives us purpose in life, that will bring fulfillment and wholeness from brokenness. May the mark that was placed on Cain be placed on us, so that every day we recognize who we live for and what we live for. Let's pray. Father, we just thank you for today. We thank you for this Sabbath, this day where we get to rest, where we get to rest in you, Father, where we can put all of our worries and our stresses aside, where we can relax and we can come to you and conversate with you. May we, in our silence, hear from you. May you speak to our hearts. May you give us wisdom and discernment and understanding as we seek the awe of you. We praise your holy name, Father. Amen.